I had to start my story when I was 7 years old because that was the very moment I will never forget. I know exactly where I was, how I felt when I detached from my body. I was a traumatized child and I just couldn't cope. I lived in constant, horrible fear. And I remember leaving my body. And, my whole childhood was very difficult, very painful. I never felt present. I never was able to communicate properly, even though I'm fluent. It wasn't a speech problem. It was communicating my feelings and my desires and thoughts. I was totally disconnected. Anyway, throughout my early adulthood, when I was old enough, I started self-medicating. Well, first I was receiving medication. I had constant psychiatric care. I was hospitalized for a period of time. And then I started abusing the medications that the hospital gave me and drinking alcohol as well. And when I reached my late 20s, I couldn't live like that anymore. I was definitely suicidal, lonely, unhappy, nobody to talk to, no one. I didn't even know how to communicate. I was in so many different programs, spiritual programs. I did so many, too many to count. And naturally they didn't. And then when I was in my 50s, I started having medical problems because I was always unhappy, suicidal, in emotional crisis. I had one dysfunctional relationship after another. And eventually I had an accident which started a whole series of surgeries. I had 3 hip replacements, broken pelvis, broken knee, spinal surgery, just like one after the other. And so now my focus became the pain and suffering, the physical pain and suffering. My whole entire life I've been unhappy. In my 50s and 60s, I would fantasize about how I was going to end my life and, who I was going to leave my money to. And those were my plans and my thoughts. A colleague of mine called me one day, hadn't seen him in over a year, and he said, "You're never going to believe who I'm doing research for." Of course, I knew about Joe Dispenza, but I never, for some reason, did the work. As soon as he said that, a light bulb went off. I said, "Oh my God, this is what I need to do." And he said, "There's going to be something brand new, a 10-day retreat in Cancún. Let's do it together." He guided me, be on that computer the second it opens up, or you're not going to get in. He told me everything I needed to know, and I got in, and he didn't. I'd never been to a retreat, and, I was so emotionally fragile, I was scared. The second I went there, synchronicities started happening. I went to dinner by myself, which is something I've never done in my life. I never went into a restaurant and sat down. I didn't have the courage or the self-esteem to say, "Hey, I deserve to go into a restaurant and have a meal." And I sat down, and there were a group of, and this was in Cancun, and we were sitting around a Hitachi, and there was a group of women sitting to my right, and they were obviously doctors. I could tell by their conversation. And my friend, who I was supposed to go with, is a doctor, and I know he was doing research, and they're talking about research, and I introduced myself. I said, "Do you know, Dr. So-and-so?" And they started screaming, "Oh my God, we love him. He was supposed to come." I said, "I know." As soon as they found out that I knew him, he was on FaceTime, and their arm was around me, and they took me under their wing, and it was like I felt so loved. I never felt that feeling from anybody, and then I felt it from everybody I ran into. It was something that I longed for in my life. I didn't know how to get it. I didn't know how to feel a part of. I didn't know how to accept love. It wasn't even a question of accepting it. It was just so abundant and so natural and so spontaneous that I could not, avoid accepting it. Then I dove in with every inch of my soul into the work. I joined everything I could join. I've been accountable since Cancun every day to report to a group how many meditations I do every day, what experiences I've had. And there's a group of us, and we've been doing that since January 1st. And I haven't missed a day. And I have to say, since I started doing the work, I've noticed definitely changes in how I feel, in terms of how I feel about life. I don't have suicidal thoughts anymore. I'm excited to do my meditations. I feel like I belong to a community. It's a total change from who I was. And so I'm 74 years old, making this change in my life. I really never dreamt. I always knew I was going to die like that, never knowing true love, never knowing true happiness. I never knew how to open my heart. And I felt it opening. It was like steam coming out of my heart. And after that, I'm just so grateful and so in love with the future. Like, I can't wait to see what happens next.